And now we want to go on a public interface. I might go a little faster because I have a lot of stuff to cover, but stop me if you need something to be cleared. And please do read your course material, and then we go from there. Okay, so we are going to be talking about public interface. So when we talked about the objects, there would be a way for people outside of the object, other programs, other people can access my object. We call them public interface. How do we communicate with outside world? So we have some public interface over here for the bank account. We have deposit money, withdraw money, and get the balance. We talked about accessors and mutators. Which one of these are accessors?
Get balance.
Get balance is accessor, okay. Oops. Which ones are mutators?
Deposit and withdraw.
Okay, so whenever we are modifying our instance variables, those are mutators. Whenever we are just getting the information, those are accessors. So if I am getting the information, do I need any parameters?
Your bank account.
So the accessors was get balance. Do I need any parameters for my get balance?
No.
No. But when I have mutators, I need the parameters for it. So when you say deposit money, the question is how much do you want to deposit? When you say withdraw money, the question is how much do you want to withdraw? So in general, again, this is not the rule. This is what we're going to be talking about. I mean, if you do it differently, the compiler is not going to complain about it. But in general, your mutators need parameters. Your accessors don't need parameters. Which one do we need a return value?
The accessors.
Accessors need the return value. Again, a general rule is your mutators are not going to return anything. They're just going to go and change the instance variable. You might see here and there some needs to return something, but in general, your mutators are not returning anything. So the rule of thumb over here, if you have a method that receives parameter and returns something, you might want to look at that method again. Most likely you have more than one thing is happening in your method. Remember, one class is going to do one task. One method is going to do one task. So your method is going to do only one thing. And if you have multiple things in your method, then you have to create more method. You have to break it down to different methods. So we have our method headers for what we want to do, the deposit, withdraw, and get balance. And we're going to talk about creating this method before you write your programs, at least the headers. So when we are talking about a class in general, the action that the class needs to do is going to be through the methods. So what do we need to do? If I have a bank account, what actions do I need to do with the bank account? Deposit, withdraw, get balance. So we're going to be talking about those things. But before we move forward, we are going to be in our design phase. Remember, in your design phase, You're either going to be working with a paper and pen, or you're going to be working in something like Microsoft Word, Google Doc, some kind of a document. You are not going to be using your IDE. You are not going to be using your compiler, whatever IDE you're using. So when you are designing, you're thinking, you're not coding. The coding is going to be later. Generally, you're going to spend 20 to 30% of your time for coding. 60 to 70% of your time is going to be, the number didn't match, it's going to be designing. So we have to be mindful about it. I know some of us coming in from programming, we just want to jump in there and start writing code. But in this class, work with me. Let's try it the correct way. Let's do the experience of that one. So if somebody asks you about the design, you know what it is. If you decide not to do it in other classes, that's your choice. But at least you have somewhere in your resume that you know what it is and you know how to do it. So the focus is going to be on design. Your next peer review, you're going to be looking at two things, the design document and the code. So you're missing a design document, I have to deduct points for you. If you're doing your design document after you're creating the code, I have to deduct points from you. It is not a busy work. It's not that I'm going to write the code and copy and paste it in the design. We want to practice the design. So we're going to be thinking about the methods that we need for the class, and then we're going to leave the implementation for later. This is part of my design. So the next question is, what do I need to get this method work? So if I am saying that I have a deposit, what kind of an instance variable do I need for my deposit? If I have a get balance, what kind of a instance variable do I need for my get balance? So we're going to be coming up with some instance variable that we're going to be keeping track of. So if I create object, the question is, what data do I need to keep track of? Generally, we put those as private. We don't want anybody to access the private data directly. We give them a mechanism of how they're going to access the data, either to get the information or modify it. I let you know how you can come into my house or come into my car. I give you a way of doing it. Either I'm going to come in and open it up for you, or I'm going to give you the car key for you to go and access my car. I will give you a way of accessing the private data. So generally, those are public methods, the way that we're going to be accessing the instance variables. All right, we're going to be talking about constructors. So if you're coming from CS2, you might have some time on this, and I have seen some of you guys are reading the book. I appreciate that, and that's the best way to do it, especially coming in from CS2, to understand these things that were not possibly not in your CS2. So if I am building an object, what do I need to build this object? So that's what's going to happen while I'm building the object. So that's what's called constructors. Constructors are public method that's going to be executed while I am building my object. So that's what's called constructor. It does set the initial data, and it is similar to the method that has two differences. So for those who coming in from 3A, what are the two differences between the constructor and my regular methods? 3A students, come on.
Same name as a class, and that it doesn't have a return type.
Good.
Right.
So they have the same name. and it's always the same name of your class, and they don't have a return type. Very good. Okay, so what about the constructors for bank accounts? What is going to be my constructors for my bank account? Remember what he said. He said it's going to have the name of the same class, and it doesn't have the return value. So constructor for the bank account is going to be called what?
Bank account?
Bank account. It does not have a return value, but can I have parameters?
Yes.
I may have parameters if I want to, or I can leave it blank with no parameters. So if I leave it blank, that means I am not receiving anything while I am building my object. That means that's called default constructor. That means I am going to be setting my instance variable to their default values. If I have parameters, I can have 1, 2, 3. I can have multiple constructors if I need more than one, and that's okay. Then those parameters are going to be setting my instance variable. So let's say that I have 5 instance variables. If I receive one parameter, that one parameter is going to set one instance variable. The rest of them, I'm going to set it to default values. If I have 5 instance variable, I can have a constructor with 5 parameters that's going to set all of them. So I go to the bank and I say, I want to create a new bank account. So the first question they ask me is what? If I want to open a bank account, what is the question they're going to ask me?
If you want to like deposit or withdraw or like any type of action associated.
That's correct. But before they do that, they would say, if I'm going to build, if I'm going to create an account for you, saving, checking, whatever you want to create, are you going to put any money in it right now? So if I say yes, they're going to call the second constructor. That means they're going to create an account for me and they're going to put that money in there. If I say no, they're going to call the first one and they're going to put the balance as 0. So I'm not depositing any money, so it's going to be 0. If they say, do you want to put any money right now? I say, okay, 100. So they would create an account for me and they're going to put 100 in it at the same time. So that's the difference between the default constructor and the constructor with one parameter for the bank account. So if I have a class that's going to have these constructors, how do I create a new object? How do you create a new object in general? Come on, guys. I need more talking. I don't want to keep asking you. In chapter 2, we talked about how to create objects. How do you create objects?
With the new constructor.
So you're going to use the word new to create a new object. You cannot use a class. You have to create an object to be able to use it. Okay? So for this one, we're going to be using the word new, and then we're going to have a one with no parameter, or we can have one with one parameter. I guess this person, mom had a lot of money, so she opened an account and it is depositing $5,000 at the same time. Somebody had a rich mom putting $5,000. And poor Harry didn't have any money. So when they created a new bank account for Harry, it was set to 0. And again, we do need to have our class type at the beginning. We will have our variable name. We will have the word new. And then we're going to call the constructor. Constructors have the same name as my class. And then we're going to define if we're going to have a one parameter or no parameter. Okay, so before we do any kind of a coding, we're going to say what kind of methods do we have, and that's going to include what kind of a constructors we're going to have. Are we going to have constructor with no argument, or we're going to have a constructor with some argument? So generally, we want to have a constructor with no argument. If I don't have any constructor, Java is going to build this for you. But when you have a constructor with one parameter or any other parameter, then you have to do this one. And we're going to write the code later. We are not writing any code right now. We're just going to specify that these are the constructors that I want. So in your design, you're going to be writing your headers for your constructors and for your methods.
So this is in the Word document, right? The Word
This is in
document.
the Word document, yes.
Before
This
we
is
actually even implement it.
correct, very good. You are not writing any code. You either do it in the Microsoft Word or you're going to do it in the paper. I mean, I would do it in Microsoft Word because I want to copy and paste it into my coding. So we're going to write this. We're going to send it to India or China, and they're going to write the code for us.
Professor, quick question.
Go ahead.
Is the Java doc HTML file going to be required for every assignment?
Dot what?
The Java doc file?
Java doc file?
Yeah, the one that breaks
I'm going
down
to get to
the-
that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Give me a few minutes. I'm going to get to that. Okay, so right now we're going to say these are the methods that we want to do, the constructors and my regular methods. So before you do anything, we're going to identify the public interface of our classes. Remember, we're going to spend a lot of time on this in chapter 8, 9, and 12. We're going to go more into how we're going to design these things. This is just the first steps, so don't panic. We're going to spend a lot of time on it. Just follow what we're doing right now, especially coming from CS2. We're going to spend a lot more time later on about the design and all those kind of things. So one of the things that's going to happen is the implementation. We are not going to be showing people our implementation. We are not going to show outside world our private data. That is called what?
The black box analogy.
Yeah, and is it called what?
Encapsulation.
Encapsulation, hiding information from others. So remember that when it comes to your interview, they ask you that, you send me a text and you let me know, because you're going to remember that. Okay, so I have a interface, public interface. So what were my public interface for BankAccount? We had 3 of them. They were what? Wake up. Public interfaces for the bank account, your mutators and your accessors and your constructors. What did you have?
Deposit, withdraw,
Deposit,
get balance,
get balance,
withdraw.
withdraw. And we had our constructor with no parameter and one parameter. Now they say, you know what? We want to do the transfer money. So the first thing is going to come to my mind when I'm doing the object oriented is, can I use the current methods without creating a new method? So somebody might go in there and say, okay, we need to transfer. Okay, let's create a new method called transfer. So if I want to transfer money from one account to another account, what do I need to do to use my own methods?
Withdraw from one account and deposit to another one.
Good, thank you. So we're going to be withdrawing from one account, and then we're going to deposit to another account. So for the interest, if I want to add interest, I'm going to get the balance. I'm going to figure out my whatever interest I have. In this case, is 5%. So I'm going to get the 5 and divide it by 100. I'm going to calculate the interest, and then I'm going to either deposit or deduct it from the account, depending on what kind of an account is it. So as a programmer, I don't need to know the details of what's happening inside the bank account. All I know is somebody has created this bank account somewhere. I'm just going to be using it. I know what kind of a methods it does have it. I'm going to use those methods to communicate with bank account object. I don't need to know the detail of it. Just like if I'm driving my car, I don't need to know the details of my transmission or engine or brake system. All I need is how to use them. And that's